All right. So we are going to start our training on backend programming language. We'll start with PHP. All right. So now this is going to be our training guide. I love to train people with the online material. The reason is so that people can easily know the by and by of how to self-learn on their own. You get, so that you can pick any, because I've seen the difficulty whereby people pick up materials and it's very, very scary to them. They don't know how to go about it. So I prefer to navigate people through the online material, because the online material is sufficient for you to learn everything you need to learn. You don't need to go to any school to pay for any extra course at all, except you want to get a certification. So I'm going to use this guru99.com for our training guide. So we will start with PHP and we will try to understand the concept of PHP and other things that are familiar with PHP. We are going to look into that to get. So now we want to check what is PHP per se. So we want to check what is PHP per se. So we are going to start from there. But before we start from there, we want to understand what is a back end. What is back end application? In programming, we have front end application. We have the back end application. Yeah, the front end is the presentation layer. The back end is the application layer. So, and in the front end, it's all about a user interface. You get. Hold on, please. All right. So now, what is backend? So backend per se is an application language that reside on a server. You get, so there's a server engine and there's a backend application that runs on that server engine. You get, so you get to understand, if we're talking about backend, you get to understand the backend applications, get to understand the server engines where it runs on. Then number 3, you get to understand database. So this is going to be 3-in-1 package. You get, so there can be no backend application without a server engine that is hosting it. It's just like it's just like an interface, like a module by which your back application can be accessed. You get, through the network. So that is the function of a server engine. Yeah. So you'll be hearing a lot about it. You hear about the what server are you hosting it on, what application server, hearing different kind of things like that. So there will be some terminologies and we will define it as we proceed. So now, PHP is a scripting language. It's just like Python, a scripting language that communicates with a server operating system. Yeah, a server operating an operating system that a scripting language that can operate on a server per se. Yeah, to script it. Yeah, just like PHP, Python. Yeah, those are the common scripting language, and JavaScript. Yeah, those are the common scripting language that we have. You get. So PHP is a server-side scripting language that is used to develop static websites, dynamic websites, or web applications. So now, what is a static website? A static website is a standalone website. Like if you remember, this is your website, Transall Technologies. That website is just purely static website. Why? Because it's not driven by, I even have it. Forgotten. Okay, like a website like this. Let me open one. So some websites that are static are website that is just standalone. It's just showing you information about the company or an industry, just showing information, what we do, about us, contact us, and things like that. Those are standalone application and servers. You get, I mean, standalone websites. Now, a dynamic website or web application. So what does it mean for a website to be dynamic or to be called a web application is that it is driven by data. It is driven by data, which means these are the websites that require login, yeah, portal that ask portals. You need to log into the portal, like our school portals and things like that. So those are web app. So a website is different from a web application. Website is just a standalone. Web application is what is a data-driven website. So it has data behind it. So when we are talking about data, we talk about database. You get. So PHP stands for hypertext preprocessor and earlier stood for personal homepage, blah, 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 blah. So those are not really important for us. I think for this one, we really get our hands on board quickly. Okay, so now the definition of a scripting language is what we have here. You get. So now what do we mean by programming per se? So there are many things here that it has to do with PHP. They spoke a lot about PHP. But I want to pick out how is PHP a programming language and what does it mean for something to be a programming language? What really does a programming language do? You get. So and I would like to let you know that if you are able to hack PHP, you're able to hack one programming language and understand it perfectly. I mean, understand it well. You'll be able to self-learn other languages like Java and anything. So you can take this very serious. If you take it very serious, you can see yourself being able to operate other programming language if one really know what it's doing. You get. So a programming language per se, what does it mean that something is a programming language? Yeah, because when you are scripting, what does it mean you are scripting? What are you scripting? What are you doing per se? Yeah, maybe you are scripting or you are programming. It's falls under the same thing. Is that you are instructing the computer, While I took us through Linux commands yesterday in one of our trainings, which we did yesterday, we learned about commands. We use commands to the operating system to carry out some functionalities that are inherent in the operating system, in the kernel. So you are able to operate interface with the kernel through the command prompt. So we can use the shell. So in Windows, it's called command prompt command. In Linux, it's called shell scripting. So likewise, in PHP, also, you are able to script the computer. You're able to script out things. So what are you scripting? You're either scripting or programming, like I said, is the same thing. You are doing some mathematical syntax, doing some calculations, you are scripting, doing some calculations, issuing commands to the computer to carry out some functionalities for you, taking advantage of the server resources. Server resources. A server is something that is hosted. And when it is hosted, you can access several things on that server. Things like the server resources, like the network connectivity, and some kind of communication that are on the server layer. It's on the internet that the server is being hosted. So that is where you have PHP running. Sorry for all this wide conversation we've been having, but I would like us to move to raw work quickly and forget about this. Now, how do you install PHP? That should be the next thing. How do you get it installed? So we can install PHP as stand on Windows operating system. The way we install PHP, and that will be a mode of assignments, which we need to do. Install XAMPP. For Windows. So now PHP is an open source. Open source is a terminology. What does open source mean? Open source means that it is open to modification, personal modification. It means that some set of people built the PHP compiler. You get the PHP scripting language, they built it as a whole. But you, if you can suit it for your own taste, like the way the language runs, you want to modify it for yourself. You get. Now, you might try to ask, what does it mean to, what does open source really mean? Like, what is the closest thing that will make it understand an open source? The closest thing that will make you understand an open source is Android operating system. Android operating system runs on several devices, like a Huawei device, Techno, Samsung, and so on. So it is an open source. Samsung can determine to use the Android operating system in a particular customized version to make it operate in a particular way. The way you see your contact, the way you can save your contact can be different from the way Techno saves its own, but yet it's the same operating system. But it means that the whole work of an operating system for a mobile phone, for a smartphone, has been built. So each one can download it and fit it for their own device. You get. So now, what about iOS? iOS is not an open source because iOS is only found on Apple device alone. It's not subject to modification or anything. It has been pre-built. It's what they finalize on it that you can use. Anything that you're looking for that is not on it, you are doomed. It's done. You can't use it. But something like PHP, Java, and Co, they are open source, which means people can keep upgrading on it, putting more function. I can have it for myself and modify for my own self, create some library. Okay, my own PHP is able to behave this way and that way. You get. But every language that's open source have a foundational syntax which they all obey. You get. So I need you to understand that. So now, how do we install PHP? We install using XAMPP. XAMPP is an application. What is XAMPP? XAMPP is a combination of three things together. Apache. Look at remove X. A for Apache, M for MySQL database, P for PHP. So because for PHP to run effectively, you will need an Apache server. The Apache is the server engine. It's the server engine that helps your PHP to run, to execute, to run. If the server is down, the Apache server is down, you can't do anything with PHP. So whenever you are getting something like server error, server down, it's possibly this server engine is not live. We have different server engines. We have Apache, we have Tomcat, we have JBoss, we have several ones. But for PHP, for this one, you don't need to trouble your life. Just this exam help you to install Apache with its configuration and everything on your system. It gives you access to a free database. MySQL is open source. MySQL is a database. I want to confirm so that I know you are with me. Have you heard of MySQL database before? Is it something you've seen before? You've heard of before? Okay, but you are aware of something called SQL?
Yeah.
Right. Oh, very good. I think we can move more faster there. So MySQL is a type of SQL. You get SQL is sequential query language, which means it's a common language. It's just like we have English as a common language in different countries. You get. So, which means everybody must obey the common way of usage of English. Full stop, apostrophe, all those kind of how to make a statement, a statement, how to include a verb, a phrase, a clause. You get. So that's how SQL is. So SQL is a standard language. So which means if you can know the general syntax of SQL, you can say that you are an expert in MySQL. You can say you are an expert in Oracle database. You can say you are an expert in MS SQL. You get. So knowing one database can give you privilege of saying you know 3 databases as a whole. So when you see some CVA and you are seeing them having like they have experience in 4, 5 databases, it's not as if they learned everything 1, 2, 3, 4. No, they knew one, the sequential query language, and because they knew it is the same across all boards. So you have free MySQL here. free MySQL. Yeah. Then you have PHP, P for PHP. So when you install XAMPP on your Windows, it installs everything for you. So if you want to install, first of all, go to your you check if your system is 64 bits or 32 bits. Then click and install and download it. Then the installation is straightforward. Just keep clicking, check the directory where you want to install it. So I've sent the installation for XAMPP to the Telegram channel to install. You get, for if you're on Linux, this is the installation guide for Linux. For Macintosh, this is it for Macintosh. You get. So once you install it, this is what you are going to find. This is the application. This is XAMPP. This is my desktop. This is XAMPP. I double click it. This is how it looks like. This is how it looks like. Look, Apache, MySQL. Okay, it's not including PHP here. PHP is inbuilt within. So this panel is used for you to start the sessions. Number one, this is Apache. For me to run my PHP to allow my PHP to work, I need to start my Apache. It's just click away. Once it's green, it means it started. It starts on what? Port 80. Port 80. And 443. 443 is for HTTPS. HTTPS. Port 80 is for only HTTP. You get. MySQL also, you can start it. Yeah, because if your web application is using MySQL, you need to start MySQL here. So I'm going to teach you how all these things works together. How these things works together. First of all, see one of the work I have on my system. Localhost. I want to run something. Things Trivia Portal. Now, this is a web application on my system. This is a web application on my system. I built this on my system. So this is where we are now going to begin to understand some basic terminologies that will be a building, that will build your foundation in knowledge of the whole concept of web application is. Now, I have something called localhosts. Localhosts here mean my local address of my computer is the same thing as 127.0.0.1. Personally, your local address of your, every computer must have an IP. An IP. Yeah. So by default, your computer has a local IP. It is called 127.0.0.1. But the domain name of it is called localhost. It's called localhost. So also a server, my server 185 is the IP of my server, because 185.229.119.211 is because this is the identity of the server, the IP address assigned to it, because it's a server, you get. But because my laptop is a standalone laptop, it doesn't cause trouble. Nobody needs to connect to me. All my resources is a system resources. It's not system to system. My server here is system to system because other system can connect to it, can connect to this IP. But this one, nobody can connect to me because I'm a local host. I'm a standalone. 127.0.0.1. It's the same thing if I put local hosts. Now, what makes it possible for me to be able to load this web application? What makes me to be able to load it is because of I have started my Apache server. Port 80, that's the default port is 80. You are not seeing it there. Anytime you are not seeing any port, the default is 80. Or 80, yeah, it's the default. Anytime you are not seeing a port on a URL. So this is my URL bar of my browser, and I'm able to access it because I've started my Apache server. Let me stop it, for example, with my PHP. Then you'll see something fun. You see, it's trying to load. This site cannot be reached. So whenever you see something like this, it's probably because maybe that site server is down. So whenever you hear that server is down, what it means is the server engine that powers up that web application is down. It's not started. It's either it has crashed, or the system has shut down and restarted. When the system shut down and restart, there are some, although new system today will restart your server automatically for you. Old system of those time will not restart it. You need to start it manually by yourself. So maybe your system crashed, shut down, one thing happened, and your server went down. Or maybe there's an overload. There's some server engine like Apache or some that when there's overload, meaning that people are hitting your server too much and the system cannot carry those loads, it will shut down, it will stop. So if I want to make this to be able to connect back again, I need to start this. So when I start it, you can see it gives me signal green. It means my server is live. Then I'm back live again. My application is live again. So I will probably take you through a journey of some hosting servers also and show you some of these things. Now, that's number one. This is your XAMPP that you installed. Then this is the control panel you see. And this is how you start your server in order to allow anything you write on PHP to run. So anything you have on your PHP, before it can run, you must have this. The PHP application engine is sitting on your Apache server engine. You get? So MySQL is a database. We'll talk about this one later. Now, where is your directory? If you remember yesterday, I showed you something on my server. In our training yesterday, we looked at something on where I told you where my on my Linux server where my PHP directory is stored, where my PHP files are stored, where my website are stored. Showed you something like var / www/html. List it. This is all of my application. So now, this application that you see running on my local host here is the one I uploaded to my server here. Is the one I uploaded here, which is under this directory, var www.html. So when you install XAMPP, when you install this XAMPP, there's a directory it's pointing to. You will see that directory when you're installing it. That directory is found here. Under your computer, go to your C drive. Because XAMPP, this XAMPP, this is naturally by default, it will choose to install it under C drive. This is XAMPP. This is XAMPP. HTTP docs. Now, this is where all my website is. So this King's portal, King's Trivia portal that you are seeing is under this folder. Where's King's Trivia portal? King's Trivia portal. King's Trivia portal, where are you? Okay, this is it. This is King's Trivia portal. So this King's Trivia portal, which means anything I do under King's Trivia portal will impart on this website here. So if I'm creating any website, I'll create it underneath here so that when I start my Apache server, I will be able to access it from this directory. Why? Because while you are installing XAMPP, it does everything for you. You get? Because you're on Windows. Windows is a lazy mechanism. If you're on Linux, you configure everything by yourself. The directory where you want it to point to, you do everything by yourself. But Windows will automatically do things for you. So under Apache, if we look at some configurations, I don't need to bore you about it. These are the configurations under Apache. You see the directory where it's pointing to where your website files are written under. You see everything, but I don't want to bore you with it. All these configs, they are the configuration of your server. You get your Apache server. This config here. See your configuration of your Apache server, different configuration you see there. Please don't tamper with it. Just leave it on its own as it is. So when you start it and you type anything like, for example, let me type another website for you to see. King's Trivia Web is another website. What I'll just do is change this, remove this, then change it to King's Trivia Web. You see, this is a website. It's loading it from there. It's loading in King's Trivia Web. It's loading it from directly here. It's pointing here. So the same thing as this server. This server is pointing. So as I have /var, let me pwd /var as my root directory, from my root directory to var folder, to www folder, to html folder. That is, under HTML folder is all of my websites are. All of these guys you are seeing. All of my websites, yeah, here. 10 minutes, Joshua, our meeting went 10 minutes. We'll restart immediately after 10 minutes. Thank you. So as I have on my website here, it's equivalent to what I have in this Windows. Everything I have here, it's equivalent to it here. It's equivalent to me having all of my website under this directory. See this directory under C, XAMPP, HTTP, HT docs. I have on my website here. So Joshua, is this clear? Like how to install, when you install, where you find your applications, your web applications. Is it clear to this point? All right. Now I'm throttling Linux and Windows together so that you'll get very, very familiar with these things. So you could see under Linux where it is being stored. You could see on Windows where it is being stored. You get. So before we now hit the road running, for us to now begin to script a typical PHP, before we begin to go to the core programming things, you get. I would like to explain this MySQL, how MySQL comes into the play. So MySQL also, now, all these things, anything related to server, you are hosting on server, it will need network connectivity. It will need to connect to that server heartbeat. A server heartbeat is the network layer. That's the heartbeat of a server, of a operating system, of a server. Because you must be able to connect with. That is why it's a server. A server means that it is serving you something. Or you go to a restaurant and you make order for a food, the server will serve you the food. You get. So the reason why it's called a computer is called a server is that it is serving you something. So the heartbeat of the server is what? The network layer. The network layer. It will have everything to do with ports. It will have everything to do with IP. You get. You must keep that in mind. So now, what I have here, the reason why what we're having here is my computer is a standalone server. By installing this XAMPP on it, this XAMPP application on it, it is standing as the moment I start my Apache, my computer becomes a standalone server on its own. It's a standalone server, meaning that I can only access the resources on this computer through my web from port 80 for my PHP applications. Now, for your database is also resting on your Apache too. It's resting on this Apache. It's being kickstarted on this port 3306. Don't joke with it. Now, you can even see that this PID means process ID. Process ID. The process running is running on process ID for your Apache 11376 and 1156, and your MySQL 12820. All these ones are core computer language, computer features within the operating system. For operating system, whenever you start an application, there's a process ID attached to it. You can always see it on your task bar. Right click, go to your task manager. You always see, look at your processes. Under your processes, there's a place where you should have the process ID. I don't know if this one is displaying it. It's supposed to have the process ID somewhere. App history. Hold on, I'm trying to check for process ID. You see, this is it. Details. This is showing all of my applications running. The operating system attached a process ID to every one of them. Everything, even all your Chrome. See, because of the number of tabs that open on my Chrome, there's a process ID for each and every one of them. Look at all my Chrome tabs. Look at Chrome. So look, you will see my Apache now. This is HTTPD is for Apache. This is Apache. This is my Apache running on this box. Let me check for MySQL is running independent of its own. This MySQL D. I saw it just now. My SQL D is running on this box, running on this process ID. So that's boring. Let's not waste time on. I'm just showing you some features that has to do with computer science. Yeah, that you need to know. So MySQL is running independent on its own, and I will show you as time comes in how a MySQL looks like, a training on MySQL, because we'll learn is a total package. We'll learn it together. So let's start with PHP. PHP rests on Apache. Now it's being kickstarted by this port, it can be accessed through my local host, my IP of my computer, and the default port is 80. The reason why it's not showing 80 here, I told you before, is because the default port for all browser is 80, so it will not show it. Assuming I assign another port to it, like 8280, it will be, you see, it will show, it will tell me error because it doesn't understand. You know, I told you port is like a channel through which you can access an application. So now this port, as this port 80 has been taken, no other application can take port 80 from it. So you have to be very careful when you are installing to ask you for port. Peradventure, if your Skype is installed, if you have Skype used to steal port 80. So be careful because it can be, when you install example, it might not start. It will tell you that that application is using port 80, this particular port. So in case you meet that error, just let me know. You get, I will tell you what to do. There's a place you can change. I can change this port. I can change Apache from using this port 80. I can tell you to use another thing. Let me show you something. I go to my config, Control F, 80. Look at 80. 80. Can you see? I have something here called listen. This thing called listening. Listen. If you remember our firewall I showed you yesterday, it showed you all the ports I'm listening to, my server is listening to. This one means that let Apache listen to port 80. So in case another application is using port 80 on your system, you can change this. Once you change it, stop the server and restart it. It will start on that port. Then you can access your application on that port. So yeah, that's that one. I needed to do a lot of groundwork in that aspect so that you really understand these things properly. You get, so that you really understand it properly. So that's it, I'm done. The next thing I would like to, so what next would like to go into? Have I really touched everything? Okay, I've touched MySQL, I've touched Apache, what Apache stands for. You have nothing to do with, you have no business with Apache. Apache is just set up its configuration. Apache needs to get to connected with the network layer and all the configurations, how it's working on the system, you know, and the how much transaction per second, like a maximum TPS. Don't bother yourself about that for now. That you get to know that when you get to the expert realm. All right, so that is all about configuring a PHP. On Windows, you don't need to do anything. Just get it installed and start. You have started. Then remember that your directory is underneath here. By default, you always find it in C, XAMPP, HT, docs. Then you have your folders. Your folders now represent like your subdirectory for your website. You get. Now we are not going to go. We're not going to begin in depth on what on PHP. I think we've gone a little bit far. Now go to data types. Get. I think we'll now go to the real core work. To be understanding in this tutorial, what we'll be looking at, we'll try to understand. We're looking at data, PHP data types. You get PHP. What is variable? Use of variable. Variable typecasting, PHP constant operators, arithmetic operators, assignment operators, comparison. Now, this is what brings you to the life of a programmer. This thing you see here is the same thing you will learn on Java. The same thing you will learn on anywhere. It's just like, let me just explain how they are. If you learn one, you know all, you get. For example, if you know English, for example, you know English language. In English language, you know where to put full stop, you know where to put comma. Fine. Now, if you now want to, it's just like you now want to write, you wrote a letter in English, you now want to, they now told you that you should write it in Spanish. You know, we already have, we have Google Translator today. It's just like that. You go to Google Translator, copy your English, paste it on the Spanish translator, it will translate your English to Spanish. You get. So the difference is knowing the syntax. For example, in PHP might be using this particular syntax. In Java, it might be using this particular syntax. So what you need to understand is the concept. Like what is 2? How do we do 2 plus 2 in PHP? You know it already. So when you get to Java, you already have idea how to do 2 plus 2 in PHP. You just go to Java. How do we do 2 plus 2 in Java? You just input it there. You get. So that's, you should keep that one aside. You should learn that one aside. Okay, like I was saying, you know, that this is 2 plus 2 here, just get to Java or Python. How do you do your 2 plus 2 there? You get. Now, you need to also understand the difference in programming languages. There is something called compiler, and there's something called interpreter. All scripting language are interpreters. Interpreter means, let me, difference between compilers and interpreters. Yeah, you need to learn this. You need to know this. So I'm going to explain to you. I think this one is giving me too long. With example. What is a compiler example? You need to learn the difference between a compiler and an interpreter. This will really let you to know what is really happening here, what is obtainable here, what is obtainable there, what is not obtainable the other side. Oh, I'm so tired tonight. So why is my mouse misbehaving tonight? Okay. I'm looking for one that will give us, that I will leverage on and explain to you. Oh, can I use this one? Okay, so this is how I can explain. I don't think these guys are, I want it to be explained in a layman language, you get. So now, in programming is execution of a code of instructions you give to a computer. For example, you give instructions to a computer that put pot on the stove, on the gas cooker, put on the light of the gas cooker, and boil the water for me. No, that's a line of instruction. Now, what is interpreter? Interpreter will interpret it to execute your code one after the other, from up sequentially, from up to down. Yeah, if the first one gives an error, it's not going to execute the other one. It's not going to. It means that if you have error in line 1, line 2, it will not go further to line 2. It's going to terminate there. We have error in line 1. Programming is combination of set of instructions. Those instructions can be like 10 lines. If line 1 has error, it will not go further. That is an interpreter. But a compiler is one that, even if line 1 gives you an exception, it will throw an exception, but it can still continue executing the other ones, the other line. So those are the difference. Let me save this, our dear video, so that we can upload. Okay, so that's the difference between a compiler and an interpreter. I just mentioned it so that when we begin to see it, I will now begin to show you practically how they operate. You get? So you need to know that one apart. So you can put it aside as things you need to read on for yourself. You need to read on stuff like that on yourself. All right. So we are going to kickstart our war on PHP. How do we get started on PHP? How do I start writing my first PHP line of code? What are the syntax, the terminologies I need to know, I need to understand? You get? So that is where we're going to start from. All right. So if I want to write a code on my computer, where do I start from? So let me go to my my folder where I can create a website from. I can right click. You can write anywhere, but when you want to run it on the browser, you have to bring it inside this folder, inside this place to run it. Let's do an example. Folder, training PHP. Training PHP is my folder directory, is my website directory. and let me create a file. So now, what do you need for PHP? You need a text editor. You can't use the common. We have different text editor is a text application that helps you to write programming languages. Text editors, the most simplest is your Notepad. Notepad is very worse. Notepad plus plus. Notepad is very worse. You can't use Notepad. Notepad is very well, you can start with it, but it will stress your life. We have Notepad plus plus. You might be aware of all these things. We have VS Code, Microsoft Visual Code. We have this. So these are editors. They are just text editor. Why do I prefer this? Why do I prefer Notepad? I have Sublime. Let me put it on our charts. Let me put our date. Then study difference between compiler and interpreter. Also, text editor applications. To help write your programming code efficiently. So we have Sublime. You can download anyone you want. They are free. We have which one again? Notepad plus plus. We have VS Code. You can download whichever, but I advise use VS Code. Use VS Code. Now, why is a text editor important? Text editor is important because it helps you. It has something called IntelliSense, meaning that it has a dictionary of all PHP syntax. So it can help you while you are writing. It's recognized when you're writing PHP programming, and it helps you along the line. You understand how it helps you. So I create a new file. That is Control-N to create a new file. Yeah, let me save it. So we have to save by default. I'm going to save it to this, my directory. Where is that directory? This is my directory. This is my directory. I'm going to save it here. Oh, no, not like that. I've located it. This is my directory, training PHP. My default file index. Then you type .php, the extension. That is what makes it a PHP file. You must put the extension .php. Don't forget this. You press enter. So now we can start with our PHP file. So what is the simplest syntax to run a PHP? What's the first thing? The first thing people do is hello world. That's the first thing we're going to do. Hello world. So now, first of all, this you are going to learn a lot. You know, English language has a rules and regulation. Just like you are writing a letter and they tell you that, oh, you must start with a paragraph, this and that. Or you are writing a letter to a manager somewhere. Oh, you have to know, okay, is it a formal letter? Okay, if it's a formal letter, you start with the address, heading. So it's the same thing here. You must follow those rules. The rule of PHP is number one, save the file with .php. Number two, you must put the brace of PHP. This is the brace. This is what I call the brace. This is the code syntax brace, which means anything you want to write must be within this brace. Less than question mark PHP, then close it, question mark greater than. So anything must be within here. So the first thing is echo. Echo hello world. Bam. I save this. So what have I done? Echo is used to output. It's used to show an output out. It's used to respond. You know, it's a server. Server has one thing you need to understand has one gene within itself. Client also have one gene within itself. Let me show you to you. I spoke about it in our in our first class, or in our testing and integration training. But let me emphatically bring it up so that you will now understand what I was talking about then in relation to what a server and a client is. Where's our, okay, I'll show you something now. Just hold on. Where's server, connect to application, links. I want to show you something. Oh, it's not here. I wanted to show you something. Okay, let me show you here. Client to server. Oh, this is what I want to show you. This is what I want to show you. Exactly this. Copy image. That's what I want to show you. Let me just do something like this. You need to understand concept of what server represents, what we mean, what we call server script, what server application, what does it represent, and how does it operate? What are its traditions? What are things it obeys? What are things it does? Its inherent nature, its gene. So a server is something that produces something back. A client is something that makes a request to a server, expecting a response back. So now, a server is always expecting somebody to come and get something from him. And is always expected to return something back. You get? So that is all what we've done here. So that's all what we've done here is, whenever you initiate this application, it must return a response back. Everything, no matter what, a server must return a response back to you. Must return a response back. So it is a concept that runs on websites. You get? Whenever I run my website, I load it, it must return. This thing is returning is an HTML page, view page source. So this thing must be returned from the server. All these things you are seeing. This is a old PHP website. So this is the concept of, so your browser is the client. As you enter the URL, as you enter a URL, what it does is it tries to fetch the results from the server. So the server will receive that request and return the website back to you. So server must always return something. It must respond back to you. Let me show you here. If you go to your browser, click on inspect, show you again. Look at network. Come to network. Inspect, go to network. Reload again. As you reload, you see many things loaded. Everything that pertains to this website is being loaded here. Everything that pertains to this website is images, all the images that have to do with this website, the HTML page. You can see everything is being returned back. Look at it. See, it gives you, see, it shows you the method by which it was requested, shows you the request URL, how it was requested, the status code, 200 means success. It means it was successful. So it returned every component that has to do with our website, with the image, everything that it has to do with. Right click, inspect, go to network. You can try that on any website on your computer right now. You will see the same thing. So it shows you this is how we inspect. This is a troubleshooting that we'll come to in under our test and integration training. I will come to teach us this, how to investigate websites, investigate if some components are loading or they are not loading properly. You get? So that aside, that tells you about a server and client. A client is one that always does what? Asks for something. A server will always, when it gets that request, it must always return something back. So by default, you must always return. Or else, if you don't return something back, if you don't return, the PHP itself will return blank. A blank page is going to return. And I will show you now. So now let us try to see our website here. How do we access our website on the browser? I come to the browser. I want to access this website is created. The website is here. This is it. Training PHP. And this is the file. This is the PHP file. Index.php. So what I'll just do is come to my browser, then type localhost. Localhost is the same thing as 127.0.0.1. My default, the default IP of my standalone computer is the same across all computers. So it's the default, is the localhost default. So press slash backward slash training, type the folder training PHP, then slash index.php. If I load it, can you see something? Hello world. This is our first program language. This is our first thing we did. We echoed back this. Let me inspect it. Come to network, reload it. Look at, can you see my index.php file? Can you see it? Look at it. This is my index.php. Look at what it loaded. Look at the response. You see, it gives me my response, hello world. So this is what I responded back. Let me remove this, for example. Let me remove this and reload this. Can you see? It gave me blank. It gave me a blank response. It means the request has no response data available. It has no response data. It means I'm not responding back, which is not proper. So I have to respond back, no matter what. So I respond back with hello world. Hello world. That's why I responded back. So welcome to our first programming language, Joshua. So I think I'm going to take a break from here, and I will just do a preview, highlight of what we'll do next in our next class. You get? Are you with me, Joshua? All right. Do you have any question? Were you able to understand at least the little things I'm able to bring to your notice? Yes. All right. Thank you. Please ask questions. Don't ask questions. It's very, very important. So in our next class, we'll now be going into the thorough work of, I know that you might have taken this as a borrowed course while in university where they teach us Fortran, Pascal, and things like that, but we'll get practical on it here. So in our next class, we'll get to learn what we call data types. You get? We learn what is called data types. We'll learn, okay. I think this guy will not be the best guy to teach my student. The best guy to teach my student will be W3 School. PHP, W3 School. So W3 School, we can use it to, the reason why I like W3 School is that it has the tutorial guide outline, and it also has an try it yourself board. So you can write a PHP script here and see the response immediately. You get? So anyone that doesn't have like a laptop, they can use their phone to practice. Or you don't have PHP on your laptop yet, you can use this to practice. I would recommend this to practice. Let me post it there. I'm recommending W3 School. I'm recommending this for your practice. This W3 School. So if you don't have PHP installed here, you can use this to practice. So from here, we are going to we'll start from variables. So this is where the work starts from. So you'll be learning this, how you assign a value to a variable, what are variables, data types like, we have, just like as we have alphabet, we have numbers, we have fractions, they are types of data, you get. So a data can be alphabet, can be date of birth kind of data, can be date time, can be numeric, can be decimal, can be float. We'll get to learn all those things, and we'll get to see how computer understand these things. Computer must understand what you are instructing it so that it can process your request well. So as we are learning, we'll be going through smoothly from next week. But I needed to do the foundation for today, the foundation laying, the installation, the configurations, the basic things you need to know. You have to understand that the Apache server is the one hosting, is your hoster. Is like your hosting partner. Is one hosting your PHP. Is letting it to run. Without it, you have to start it before you start working. Without it, you can't do anything. So that will be all for today's training. Hoping that we'll be able to take it further beyond this next week. I don't want to upload us with too much, so I will make it a stop here. and so that we can continue next week. So I don't know if you have any questions. So ahead of next week, you can see this is our guideline. I'm not hiding it. This is the guideline we'll be using for training. You can click on it, you can read, even in short, you might have gone beyond. What can help us to move faster is you able to, within this time and the next 6 days, able to like read through it and try to run some things by yourself. Programming is training. It's like when you are training for swordman, you must be training every day. It's a mastery. So you must be trying something every day on your computer. W3 School allows you to execute it on the web. You can just execute something, echo, type some scripts on it, see the response, do some mathematical calculation. Even though you don't understand it, keep doing it. Whatever W3 School tell you to try, follow it, try it. It will, as you keep building up, you start getting familiar with it. You get. So next week we'll be learning syntax, variables, and other things, and we'll move to mathematics. We'll move to logics and things like that. So that will be all for now. So yeah, you are welcome. So yeah, I don't mind. I'm sure that some of our guys might be busy, but we'll upload the video on the YouTube so everybody can access it. So nobody needs to draw us backward for next training. Everybody should just go and check the video before coming for the next training. So thank you for joining tonight and see you next week. So bye-bye. Take care, bro. Yeah.